Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Amanda Ziadeh with WashingtonExec, and with me today to talk all things AI in government is David Egts, Field Chief Technology Officer of Public Sector at MuleSoft at Salesforce. Thank you so much for being here today, David.
Yeah, glad to be here, Amanda.
Awesome. All right, so let's start by first discussing some public sector AI adoption barriers. What are agencies currently challenged with that the private sector doesn't necessarily have to deal with?
Yeah, so it's like I always go back to like the Mark Zuckerberg move fast and break things, right? Where you could be a startup and it's like you could be bold, you could try all kind of great things, but the government can't, right? It's the mission that they're doing, lives are on the line, literally, and so they need to be able to do things in a very professional sort of way. So they can't do it halfway. And one of the big things with AI is hallucination. So they can't get it wrong. And but the reason why the hallucinations show up, it's because that the AI models are not grounded in customer data inside of agency data. So I think that becomes a problem. The second thing is that a lot of times all of these new models come out and they just the government can't access them right away, right? Because they're not in a FedRAMP cloud or they don't work disconnected in their own data centers. And so, they look at the private sector with a jealous eye of like, wow, I wish I had that capability. So I think that's the second problem. And the third problem is it's often workforce, right? Where, people are they agencies just they're tight with the workforce as it is, and they may not have the skill sets to do their own AI. So using what's off the shelf is often the best choice because they could ride that innovation wave that the public sector or the private sector is coming up with. And so I think that's one of the things. The other problem from a workforce standpoint is that there may be a lot of really cool research going on in the agencies on the like R&D side, but do that the frontline knowledge workers have access to it right away as well. And then the last part is the attracting and retaining talent of like how do you get people to come to do government service if they can or can't embrace AI. And I think that's a third challenge I think they face.
Mhm. All right. Well, thanks for sharing those barriers with us. So, how can private sector help agencies overcome some of these barriers?
Yeah, so I think that they can move fast and do it safely and securely. And so the first thing is figuring out it's like whatever models are available, and there are a bunch of models that are available in FedRAMP clouds, and there are models that are available that you could download and run in your own data center. But no matter what model you use, it is not trained on your agency data. So what you need to do is integrate the prompt and augment the prompt with agency data, and that's where MuleSoft could help out. At Salesforce, we also have a thing called Data Cloud, where you could pull in all of these different disparate resources and create a citizen 360 or a constituent 360 or a customer 360. And once you have all of these different views, you could fuse it together into a single view. And once you have that single view of a citizen or a constituent, that's what paves the way for you to be able to use things like AI. So that's the first thing. The second thing is like with accessing the latest models. I always talk about model optionality of like how do you lower your switching costs as much as possible. So every day I'm seeing a brand new model that comes out that is beating the latest model, and they keep leapfrogging each other, and nobody's standing still. So instead of hardwiring to like, oh, I'm using this particular model or this particular vendor, building things in so that it's like if you get mad at that particular vendor, your switching cost is very low from a technical standpoint, a cost standpoint, and then you could move to using that latest vendor right away. And related to that optionality is that for a lot of customers that are like, well, it doesn't have this model in this particular region or it doesn't have this certification, you could still start now and point to a lot of the cloud-based models. And as they show up on the regulated clouds, you could switch your API endpoint over to them as well. And so they could get started now in a test development standpoint with non-sensitive data, and then apply it to sensitive data when they're ready. Another interesting thing from an optionality standpoint that I'm seeing that is going to be very interesting is there's a concept of small language models where it's, and we're starting to see this with Apple Intelligence or on Gemini on the Google Pixel phones, right? Where they're putting the language model right on the device. And I think that's really interesting for the government customers where you have either a disconnected environment or imagine like Customs and Border Protection where they have a tactical vehicle that's out far away from a 5G signal that could reach out to a cloud. By having that switchability that you could quickly switch of, well, I don't have internet access, so I could use my local small language model for something that's good enough whenever I'm not connected, and then be able to switch to something else whenever I do have the availability. And one of the things there is MuleSoft is working on a thing called MuleSoft AI Chain, which makes it really easy. Like you don't need to be that AI PhD to really take advantage of AI, where you could take all of the integration tools that we have of hundreds of connectors and be able to wire them directly to a lot of the models that are out there that could run in the cloud or on a laptop if you want. And then the last part is about the workforce, right? Where, to me, it's like wherever possible, look to the COTS solution so you don't have to do it yourself, right? And instead of people are worried about vendor lock-in, but you have to worry about locking into your own technology that there is no other substitute in the world for, right? That you're stuck with. And the other thing is making sure that as you're doing the AI projects, you should make sure that it's available to the frontline workers so they could use it right away, so you could draw that straight line from innovation to business outcomes very, very quickly, and do the metrics to show back that, hey, it's like by adopting AI we were able to do these particular things and reduce support call burdens or deflect calls or be able to help our customers or our citizens or our constituents in a certain way that we could measure. And I always look at it as that the best AI in the world does you no good if your workers can't access it. So getting that AI out of the lab and into the hands of the end users is what's really going to make the difference. I say, as people are doing the proofs of concepts to see if AI is going to work in their agency, it's like tying it to outcomes is so important.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I guess even before they start this process, what should agencies be looking for when they're looking to adopt AI?
Yeah. So as you start doing things that are, whether it's off the shelf or you do it yourself, uh, I always encourage people to identify what your trust layer is when it comes to AI. Salesforce has the Einstein trust layer, right? And where we actually put a lot of thought into, it's like, okay, well, we're working with third party LLM providers. What are the things that we could make sure that these trusted environments don't leak PII, right? And so one of the things that we do is, for our trust layer, is that we have agreements with the LLM providers where there is zero retention of, like, if anything that we put into the prompt that we send over the wire to the LLM provider, none of that data is retained once the result comes back. The second thing is that there's no training of the input to train future models. And the third thing that we have is that no human of that LLM provider is able to see what's going on with our data at all. And so we have those agreements lined up. Another thing to consider is masking and demasking of personally identifiable information, right? So even if you have the best agreements in the world, companies are run by humans and humans make mistakes. So if you are able to come up with a trust layer that can send a prompt to a large language model that basically redacts the PII and puts in token like replacements, aliases of instead of Amanda, it replaces it with customer one, right? You pump that into the LLM and you get the result back, and then you demask it and you search and replace customer one with Amanda, right? So there's no chance of that data even making it to the LLM provider. The other thing that's really important, I know, for the public sector are things like toxicity detection, and the other thing that it's like, as I look at like the Einstein layer, and what my initial take was, this is probably the most boring part, but I think it's the most important part, is the auditing aspect of it, because and as people are doing things, people are going to be making mistakes with AI. And so what you need to be able to do is have a really robust audit log. So when something does go wrong, you need to look at the audit logs to, replay the tape to figure out what happened so they can correct that for the future. And so, and I look at it, it's like, it's like you need to have this trust layer of all of these components and a whole lot more. And so you either need to ask these hard questions of your vendors to see how they are doing a trust layer. And then you're going to have to supplement for the areas where they do not provide those particular capabilities. And so, having that criteria. And so I wouldn't just randomly go out or it's like, I'm picking the best model in the world. It's like making sure that that there is that trust layer, whether you implement it yourself or if you have the vendor implement it for you, is something that you really, really need to make sure of, to make sure that you can move fast but still do it safely and securely.
Mhm. Yeah, there are so many options out there, so that's definitely a lot to consider and think about
Yeah.
when you're choosing the best AI tools for your agency. So, and similarly, the pace of technology moves so quickly and things are changing so fast. So, how does the pace of policy development play a role? Is it keeping up with AI innovation?
I think that it's well intended, right? And I think they're doing a great job of like putting up the guardrails and everything, and that's important. But the innovation is moving faster than the policy can keep up, and let alone legislation, right? And so, what's an agency to do? And so, to me, I'll go back to what I said before about the optionality and flexibility and lowering your switching costs as much as possible. So as new policies come out and all of a sudden the provider that you're using cannot adhere to it, being able to quickly switch to somebody else is that is something that's really, really important. um, and I look at it too, it's like you also need to have uh, the APIs to access your data and integrate your data with your LLMs, and being able to reuse them as well. So instead of like every agency or every department and sub department inside of an agency doing their own LLM work or their own AI work, coming up with reusable AIs that everybody could reuse and share and build upon each other is really important, because that way, you could have one API that everybody's using and that it meets these certain guidelines. And if the guidelines change, you change it in that one place and everybody gets a benefit from it. Otherwise, every department is going to have to make sure that their AI applications are adhering to that regulation. So I think that reusability and doing API-led architectures are really important to just make sure that, again, you could move fast and be nimble as policies change.
All right, awesome. So we always, of course, love to end with a forward-looking question and some outlook. So where is the future of AI going? I know we hear a lot about generative AI and things like that. So realistically, what's next for agencies to stay on top of?
Yeah, I think that about a year and a half ago, the generative AI has captured the mainstream consciousness of like, oh wow, this is great, this is going to be life changing. And there's something that's emerging right now that everybody's talking about in Silicon Valley, and it's permeating out, across the industry. And it's the transition of going from generative AI to agentic AI or agents. And so, whenever I first heard about it, I'm just thinking, it's like, okay, well, what's an agent? How does that differ from an LLM? And how does it differ from generative AI? So generative AI is it's just generating something. It's generating text. It's generating a video. It's generating a piece of audio based upon a corpus and that you ground and you send in. And it's like, oh, I want to draft an email to Amanda of to have a meeting, right? And then it's like, I get it. I could tweak it a little bit. And then I copy and paste it into my email application, send you the email, and we'll schedule up a meeting, right? An agent, and so that's great, right? But it's only generating, I call it dead text. It's just text, right? It's not a living thing. Whereas an agent is actually, imagine having an infinite number of interns working for you to support you and taking action on the things that you want to do. So instead of me telling an LLM, draft an email to schedule a meeting with Amanda, I will talk to my agent and say, hey, AI agent, schedule a meeting with Amanda. And it will understand this, like, okay, who's Amanda? It'll be grounded in my CRM information of like who Amanda is, and it'll be integrated with my calendar. It'll know what times I'm available. It'll draft it. It'll reach out to you, and you may even have an agent on your side that is listening to your inbox saying that, oh, Dave wants to meet with Amanda, and it will say that, hey, I would love to meet with Dave. Here's Amanda's availability. And you actually have agents talking to each other that are doing that. And so to me, I think that's really exciting. And so, one of the things that if we uh, uh, drill down on that a little bit more is that everybody's talking about LLMs, or large language models. The thing that people are starting to talk about now are LAMs, or large action models. So instead of a large language model, which is generative AI that generates just a piece of text, a large action model, imagine it being a way to do workflows and to be able to reason and think a little bit. And it would call actions that would be like APIs in my system of like, oh, connect to my calendar and see my availability, connect to the email client and send an email to Amanda, right? And so, like, I'm really excited about that. We just came off a Dreamforce in September where we had 45,000 people in San Francisco and millions of people watching online. And we released Agentforce. And it was, I thought it was amazing. Like, they had a customer that was on stage, Wiley, the bookmaker, and, the book publisher, where they were saying about how they were doing, it's back to school, right? And so they could have a surge, and where it's like you have all these students calling about, hey, I ordered the wrong book, or I need help, or customer support and all that. And if you think about the seasonality of their business, back to school season is a very bursty sort of time where it's pretty quiet the rest of the year, right? And I was thinking about that, and it's like, yeah, there's a lot of seasonality also in the government as well. So, with IRS, April 15th, you're going to have the surge of calls that would build up and decline. USCIS for visa processing on April 1st, right? FEMA, where it's not even predictable when you're doing disaster response, right? So being able to hire a bunch of virtual assistants that can go and be able to address these needs, and then spin up and then spin down. It was like, to me, I think that would be amazing. And like in the case of Wiley, they were one of our first customers to do this. And within a few weeks of the initial deployment, they actually saw an over 40% improvement in case resolution compared to their previous chatbot solution. And so, and if we think about like chatbots, right? You're probably thinking, it's like, what's the difference between an agent and a chatbot? And I was thinking the same thing too, right? It's like, I don't know about you, I've never had a happy experience with a chatbot, right? It's like you start off and you're about 3 exchanges in, and you're like, operator, I want to talk to a human. It's like, I'm so frustrated with you. And it's because what happens is the person that built that chatbot actually had to go through and figure out every single possible scenario and every single workflow. And more likely than not, the question you have is outside of that workflow, and it's over on the side. And whereas with an agent, instead of the human coming up with all of the different flowcharts of how to guide a customer through this, you basically, it's pretty flat, where you say that here are the things that I want you to work on. I want you to be able to track my order status. I want to be able to rebook something. I want to cancel something. And it's just a list of things that I want you to be able to do. You also want to put in guide rails too, or guardrails, where you say what you don't want it to do. we've seen where it's like, oh, hey, chatbot, I want you to tell me how to build a bomb or how to do something, write some Python code for me. And you want to tell it, it's like, if I want you to do these things here, and if you can't and what it'll do is the large action model will calculate a probability of what is the best function call or action that I should take based on all of these potential actions I have. And if it's a very low probability for all of these, you just empty out and say that, sorry, I can't help you, right? Like if it's asking for legal advice or medical advice. And so to me, I think that's really exciting. And the other super amazing thing is that with, a lot of times companies will come out with, hey, we got agents and it's a lot of vaporware. And a lot of times as a nerd, I'm skeptical and it's like, all right, I want to get hands on with it. And I was so surprised. Like the week of Dreamforce, we have a thing called Trailhead that has hundreds, thousands of free courses that you could take. They have them for AI and agents and doing technical career growth skills and things like that. And you could actually go in and build an agent. And so, like, I watched the keynote and then I went into Trailhead and I was able to build my own agent inside of Salesforce in a matter of minutes. And it's real. And so it was, and I was able to do it really quickly. So, my call to action for the govies that are like, man, what do I got to get ready for next year? And what do I got to be thinking about is like, go out to Trailhead and build an agent, right? And we even have certifications. We've made our certifications for agents and for AI. They're free until the end of 2025. So how could you beat free like in-person certifications for customers that go in and get certifications and again upskill themselves, as I talked about earlier, in terms of being really being able to help address the needs of the mission.
Awesome. Yeah, the use cases for that seem endless. Like you're mentioning, all the ways in government that it can be useful and help reduce, time and costs and all those things. So yeah, put it to work, test it out.
Yeah,
Awesome.
for sure.
Yeah. Well, David, it's always a pleasure catching up with you, and thank you so much for sharing these insights on AI and the future of AI and how it can be helpful and beneficial for government. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Amanda.